Maple Ridge had always been the kind of neighborhood that people dreamed of living in. Wide streets, neatly trimmed lawns, white picket fences, and families that waved to each other every morning. It was the picture of safety and routine, the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. So when 12-year-old Ellie Warner didn't come home from school one afternoon, the entire community was shaken to its core. She had taken the same route every day for the past year. 4 blocks, a left turn at the grocery store, and then straight to her front door. But on that day, something went wrong. Her mother, Melanie, began to worry when Ellie didn't walk through the door by 3:30 p.m. By 4 o'clock, she was outside, pacing the sidewalk. By 6 o'clock, the police were at the house. The initial assumption was that Ellie had simply gotten distracted or gone to a friend's house, but that theory unraveled quickly. Her friends hadn't seen her since school let out. No one had. Except for one neighbor, an older woman named Judith, who recalled seeing Ellie walking past her house around 3:15, alone and carrying her backpack. That was the last confirmed sighting. Flyers were printed and posted on every light pole, bus stop, and corner store. Volunteers scoured the nearby woods, parks, and abandoned buildings. The local news stations aired Ellie's photo, asking for tips. Police set up a hotline and interviewed every registered offender in a 10-mile radius. But no one had seen or heard anything. The hours turned into days, and hope began to fade. There was no sign of a struggle. No blood. No evidence left behind. She had simply vanished. The Warner family's home became a vigil site. Candles, stuffed animals, and notes piled up on their porch. Reporters camped outside, and strangers from other towns sent cards and prayers. Melanie and her husband, Jack, pleaded for information on television, holding up Ellie's school picture. But the leads grew cold. Investigators started to look inward, turning their focus toward the people closest to Ellie. Teachers, neighbors, family friends, all were questioned. Some were even interrogated. But the truth remained buried. What troubled detectives most was the complete absence of motive. Ellie had no known enemies. Her family wasn't involved in anything shady. She hadn't been bullied, and there were no custody battles or personal disputes. For all appearances, she was just a happy, ordinary girl from a happy, ordinary family. That made her disappearance even more terrifying. If someone like Ellie could vanish without a trace, what did that mean for everyone else? Whispers began to spread among neighbors. Parents stopped letting their children walk alone. Security cameras went up on front doors. The neighborhood changed, almost overnight. What had once felt like a bubble of peace now pulsed with paranoia. Every friendly wave was returned with a suspicious glance. Ellie's absence became a silent wound, one that no one could ignore but everyone feared to touch. And as each day passed, the fear deepened. Whatever had taken Ellie was still out there. And no one knew who, or what, it was. 3 weeks had passed since Ellie Warner disappeared, and the investigation was losing momentum. The police had followed every lead, interviewed dozens of residents, and analyzed surveillance footage from nearby shops and intersections. But nothing connected. There were no calls demanding ransom, no unusual activity on Ellie's devices, no evidence of her running away. The community's attention began to drift, as the case slipped from nightly news headlines to the back pages. Yet, just as hope was beginning to dim, a single envelope arrived at the local police department, typed, unmarked, and chilling. Inside was a short letter. There was no signature, no return address. But what the letter said instantly reignited the case. The writer claimed that Ellie was alive. Not safe, alive. The tone was cold and cryptic. It said she was being punished for what she did. It gave a location, a spot in a forested area just outside town, an old hiking trail that had long been abandoned. The letter instructed police to go alone and not involve the media. Authorities didn't know if it was a hoax, a cruel prank, or the first real clue. Still, they followed the instructions. What they found was a shallow burial site beneath a fallen tree. Inside wasn't a body, but a metal box, rusted and sealed tight. When they pried it open, the contents stunned them. Ellie's pink backpack was inside, folded carefully. Next to it was her beloved stuffed bear, worn down and dirty. And at the bottom, wrapped in plastic, was a USB drive. It contained only one file, an image. The photo showed Ellie sitting against a wall in a dimly lit room. Her clothes were different from the day she vanished, and her expression was vacant, as if her spirit had left her body. In her hands was a piece of paper with a message written in large, blocky letters. She lied. That phrase became the new focus of the investigation. What had Ellie lied about? And to whom? Detectives studied the image frame by frame. There were no visible clues about where she was being held. No windows, no identifiable objects. Just cracked concrete walls and a faint shadow that suggested she wasn't alone in the room. Forensic experts tried to enhance the image, but it only raised more questions. Was this a cry for help, a staged photo, or something darker? The letter and photo were enough to classify the case as an abduction. The FBI was called in. Agents profiled the letter, analyzing the language and formatting. They believed the writer was educated, calculating, and possibly someone who knew the family. The line, being punished, implied personal motivation, someone who felt betrayed or wronged. News of the image and letter was never released to the public. Authorities feared it would create hysteria. But behind closed doors, the case took on a new tone. This wasn't a random kidnapping. It was deliberate. Personal. The silence around the case now felt oppressive, like a heavy fog, and Ellie's image, haunting, distant, yet alive, hung over every conversation. Whatever this was, it was far from over. The message was clear. Someone was watching. Someone was playing a game. And the rules were only just beginning. The discovery of the letter and the haunting image of Ellie set off a new wave of urgency among investigators. With the possibility that she was still alive, every second mattered. For the first time, they began to reevaluate not just the crime but the people connected to Ellie's life. Family friends, former teachers, anyone with a motive for revenge. They dug through court records, school files, and counseling reports, hoping to find a thread that explained the cryptic message, "She lied." That phrase haunted everyone involved in the case. What had Ellie supposedly lied about, and why did it matter so much? Their answer came from an unexpected direction. 6 months before Ellie disappeared, she had testified in a family court hearing involving her best friend, Mia. Mia's father, Dr. Carl Messner, had been accused of emotional abuse by his ex-wife. As a respected child psychologist, Dr. Messner had many in the community convinced he was a stable, trustworthy parent. But Ellie had given a written statement supporting Mia's mother, saying she had overheard things at sleepovers, threats, shouting, and something Ellie described as weird punishments. Her statement had tipped the case. The judge awarded Mia's mother full custody, and Dr. Messner lost all visitation rights. He had reportedly moved out of town shortly afterward. On paper, it seemed like a closed chapter. But when detectives revisited the case, details began to stand out. Dr. Messner hadn't just left town, he had disappeared entirely. No forwarding address, no employment records, no online presence since the court decision. His medical license had quietly lapsed, and attempts to contact him were unsuccessful. Digging deeper, the FBI discovered something chilling. Dr. Messner had created several false identities, each linked to burner phones, prepaid credit cards, and rented mailboxes across 3 states. He had the skills and knowledge to disappear and stay hidden. When they pulled traffic camera data from the area around the time Ellie vanished, a dark blue sedan with plates registered under one of those identities was spotted near her school. Still, there was no direct evidence tying him to the crime. He hadn't made contact with Ellie's family, hadn't demanded anything, and hadn't used any of her belongings. Yet the connection seemed too strong to ignore. Investigators issued a nationwide alert for Carl Messner, listing him as a person of interest. Meanwhile, they began surveillance on anyone known to have communicated with him before he disappeared. Then came the second letter. It arrived in the same plain envelope as the first and was addressed directly to Ellie's parents. The message was short and cruel. "You taught her to lie. Now you'll learn what pretending costs." That single sentence changed everything. The writer wasn't just targeting Ellie. They blamed her parents, too. It was no longer just a kidnapping, it was a punishment with purpose. The FBI now believed the crime was driven by deep resentment. Someone felt wronged, betrayed, humiliated. This wasn't about ransom or exploitation. It was personal. The kind of personal that turns a calculated mind into something far more dangerous. Investigators were beginning to understand what they were up against, and it terrified them. Agents had been working around the clock, and every road led back to the same name, Dr. Carl Messner. With his background in psychology, his sudden disappearance, and his deep connection to Ellie's court testimony, he was the most likely suspect. But knowing something and proving it were two very different things. Without a concrete lead on his location, investigators were chasing shadows. That changed when a young cyber analyst flagged suspicious activity on a private online forum known to host disturbing content. One of the users, operating under the alias The Teacher, posted cryptic messages that eerily matched phrases from the anonymous letters sent to police. This user had also uploaded a string of short, text-only posts referencing judgment, lies, and justice, recurring themes in Ellie's case. The IP address had been masked and rerouted through multiple countries, but one slip led investigators to a small property rental in rural Indiana. It was registered under a shell corporation, which upon investigation was connected to a defunct psychological services company Dr. Messner had operated in his early career. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a warrant. When agents arrived at the property, it looked abandoned from the outside. Overgrown weeds, boarded windows, no signs of life. But once inside, the air shifted. It was cold, silent, and felt like a place untouched by time. The main floor was empty, just a few broken pieces of furniture and empty food containers. But the basement door was reinforced with multiple locks. After breaking through, what they found sent waves of horror through even the most seasoned agents. The basement had been converted into a crude underground holding cell. The walls were concrete, lined with scratch marks, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. On the far wall were shackles bolted into the floor. A single mattress lay in the corner, stained and torn. Near it sat a dusty teddy bear, identical to the one found in the buried box. There were also notebooks, hundreds of pages detailing corrections, punishments, and psychological experiments. The pages were written in a cold, clinical tone, as if documenting lab results rather than the suffering of a child. Even worse, there were VHS tapes, labeled only with dates and brief descriptions. While most of them had degraded, some were still playable. Investigators reviewed a few, each revealing small, horrifying glimpses of a child in captivity. Ellie appeared in several, always quiet, always obedient, clearly conditioned by fear. She never spoke on camera. Her silence was deafening. But Ellie wasn't there. There were no recent signs of life. Blood samples, hair strands, and fingerprints were collected and later confirmed to belong to her. The last entry in the notebooks was dated 2 weeks before the property was raided. It simply read, "She has accepted the truth. No more lies." With the physical evidence collected, authorities arrested Carl Messner, who was found days later in a motel under another identity. He didn't resist. He offered no confession, no denial, only a calm stare when asked about Ellie. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he refused to reveal her current whereabouts. He claimed she was where lies can't reach her anymore. It was the only sentence he spoke after his arrest. The arrest of Dr. Carl Messner sent shockwaves across the country. His calm demeanor in court, his silence during interrogations, and his refusal to speak about Ellie Warner's whereabouts created a storm of confusion and outrage. Despite the overwhelming evidence found in the basement, no one could confirm whether Ellie was alive or dead. Every effort was made to trace his movements over the past 3 months, but no other locations were found. No hidden cabins, no accomplices, no recent purchases that might suggest he was supporting someone in hiding. It was as if Ellie had simply disappeared off the face of the earth. 3 months after his arrest, just as public attention began to shift to other news, one final package arrived at the police station. It was wrapped in brown paper, carefully sealed with black electrical tape. The label had no name, only a return address that led to an empty lot in Michigan. Inside was a single item, a worn VHS tape marked in fading ink with 4 words, "For the world TOC." No note, no explanation. When authorities played the tape, the room fell silent. The footage was grainy, the sound muffled. It began with Ellie, sitting on the floor of the same basement they had found weeks earlier. She looked thin, her skin pale, her hair longer and unwashed. Her eyes were empty. She stared straight into the camera, expressionless. Then she began to speak, softly, her voice shaking. She explained how she had been taken, how she had been made to write and rewrite confessions. She described the punishments she received whenever she said something that didn't fit his narrative. The tape lasted 11 minutes. Her final words were quiet and almost inaudible. "I didn't lie. I just wanted to help." Then the screen went black. After several seconds of silence, the camera cut to the empty room. The mattress was gone. The chains hung loose. On the floor sat Ellie's teddy bear, clean, and placed gently in the center. That was the last known image of her. There were no further clues, no background noise, no exit caught on tape. The timestamp showed the footage was recorded just 5 days before the police raid. Despite national attention and a renewed search effort, Ellie's body was never found. Some believed she had been moved to a second location. Others speculated she had died shortly after the tape was made and her body hidden so well it would never be recovered. Theories spread wildly, some claiming she escaped and chose never to return, others suggesting darker endings. But none were proven. Dr. Carl Messner remained in custody, refusing to speak to anyone. 6 months later, he was found dead in his prison cell, the victim of a violent stabbing. No final words, no written confession. His secrets died with him. The case became a symbol of unthinkable cruelty hidden behind a mask of intelligence and respectability. It shattered the illusion of safety in small towns. It exposed the quiet horrors that can hide in plain sight. And more than anything, it left a scar that never truly healed. A child was taken, tortured, erased, and all for reasons rooted in vengeance and control. A reason that made the world question what humanity was capable of when it lost all empathy.